It's time to stop and listen to TMG.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to TMG. I'm your host, Travis Patton Sr. I enjoy discovering and sharing real-life moments of inspiration from everyday people. And this show is about finding moments of inspiration for our everyday lives. And look, and if you're going to tell me something, then tell me something good. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of TMG. That's Tell Me Something Good. I'm your host, Travis Patton Sr. Real quick, guys, before we get started, don't forget to visit our Facebook page. That's Tell Me Something Good with the capital T. Guys, you know how we do it. Before we dive in, before we get started, I got to give a shout out to my biggest supporter, my best fan, guys, my lovely wife, Nicole. Hey, Nicole, girl, I know you're watching. I know you're listening. That's your shout out for today. Guys, look, in a very, very short time, the show has taken off. It's being heard in countries all around the globe. And I'm so excited that you guys have been on this journey with me and that you're tuning in each week right here on Facebook Live, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, guys, 2 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Mountain Time, guys, that you are here with us. I'm so glad. And whether you're driving in your car or maybe you are at work, or maybe this is your first time tuning in, whatever it is, I'm so glad that you guys decided to join the show today. Guys, today's topic is something that I'm equally excited about. And I may say, Travis, man, you're always excited about what you're going to share. Yeah, because listen, the things that I share, I can implement them in my life. I live them and I've experienced them. So I know it's something that helps us. Guys, today's topic is a pinch of this, a pinch of that. Yeah, I know you've heard that before. A pinch of this and a pinch of that. Yeah, that's today's topic, guys. That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's dive in and let's digest this a little bit. So I actually was thinking about this topic today, what made it kind of come to my mind. My wife was cooking one day, and I was asking her, how did she prepare her meals, what she was cooking? And I said, well, where's your measuring spoon? And she said, well, I don't need one. She said, when I first began preparing this meal, this dish, I can't remember what it was she was cooking. She said, when I first began preparing this dish and this meal, she said, I used to use measuring spoons. She said, I don't need to use that anymore. I don't have to use it. And she said, I just know it just calls for a pinch of this and a pinch of that. And I said, how do you know you're not leaving something out? How do you know something is not missing? She said, does anything ever taste any differently when I cook? I said, no, everything tastes great. She said, that's how I know. And I remember my grandmother doing the very same thing. A lot of times she had this cookbook. Now, she had a cookbook, but a lot of times I would say, grandmother, this says 2 teaspoons of this. And she would go just get a pinch of this and a pinch of that. And the meal would turn out delicious, okay? It would turn out great. Does anyone out there other than myself have ever witnessed or seen anyone prepare a meal and cook, and they just seem to have some type of superpower, some type of superpower when it comes to cooking? They just know what needs to be added, and most importantly, they know what's missing. Some of the most experienced cooks seem to have that power, right? They seem to have almost like a super power. They possess this kind of innate ability to know just what's left out from a recipe. And how they can tell, I don't know. How they can tell if what's missing makes a difference at all. Like my grandmother, my wife, they will be able to just kind of taste it and say, yeah, it needs more of this, or it needs a little more of this. And they will be able to taste it and it can tell just what's missing from giving it that certain flavor that we're looking for. And how can they tell if what is missing is even making a difference? You have everything going on. You have this spice added, you have that spice added, you have this added to it. How in the world can you even tell that what is missing is even making a difference at all? So I wanted to know that. So how can you tell if what's missing is even making a difference? And I began to think, just like those dishes, those meals that can leave our mouth watering and wanting for more. So many people, so many of us feel they don't make much of a difference if they're not added. So many people walk through life and feel like they just don't make much of a difference in the world. And they begin to wonder if they're being left out of something, or if they that or what they do even matters, or if they even matter themselves. Well, I'm here to tell you, think again, because you add something that no one else can add. Yeah, you add something that no one else can add. Guys, I want to put up a picture of something real quick. There are all kinds of spices. Yeah, there are all kinds of spices. I'm going to throw up these pictures of spices. I'm familiar with some common spices, but there are all kinds of spices in the world. You know, sometimes things call for a cup of sugar here, a pinch of salt, a dash of this, a dash of that. Some recipes require many different spices and herbs, right? I mean, if you're cooking, some recipes require many different spices and herbs. You know, some recipes don't always call for the same spices or the same herbs. Some things just call for something different. If you need something a little more spicier, then you'll grab something that has a little spicier taste to it. You want something that has more of an earthy taste. You kind of get that earthy taste, to it, right? And so some recipes, some dishes call for or require different spices and herbs. And they can be as simple as pepper and salt, or they can range from combinations of things like saffron and cumin. A lot of the spices may not be found in every household kitchen, right? Some household kitchens, you won't find saffron, you won't find cumin, you won't find coriander. Some things you won't find in the average household kitchen. And many come from different countries, different cultures, and they may have different cultural differences and reasons for their use. Some spices are used because of cultural reasons. Some things are just added because it's part of the culture, part of what we do. In other words, part of how we make it do what it do and make it taste the way it tastes. But most who do the largest share of cooking will typically be able to tell when certain seasons or certain types of spices and seasons are missing from a dish, making the dish incomplete. You know what I mean? And missing that kind of that, as we put it, that je ne sais quoi we have grown accustomed to tasting. In other words, it just don't taste the way it normally tastes without certain things. It doesn't taste the way we're used to it tasting without a certain kind of, little punch to it. That's what we want to talk about today. That's what we want to talk about today. A pinch of this, a pinch of that. Yeah, that's kind of what we want to talk about today. We want to tackle that. The times when we feel like just because we aren't the main ingredient, we don't really add flavor to the dish. The times we feel like just because we aren't you know how when you're looking at a recipe book and it begin to list the things that you add in the recipe, and it goes down number 1, number 2, number 3, and it starts listing what goes in the recipe. Well, today we want to talk about those things and those times when we feel like just because we aren't the main ingredient, we don't really add to the flavor of the dish. Just because you're not number 1 in the list of ingredients, you should not feel that you don't add flavor to the dish, when in fact, you have just as much to say about how it turns out as anything else in the recipe. Yeah, you may not be first in the list, but because you are on the list, you have a whole lot to say about how things turn out, just like anything else in the recipe. I'm not going to get ahead of myself because this is good. This is good. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. A pinch of this and a pinch of that. When you feel small, when you feel feelings of insignificance, feelings of not being enough, feelings of not measuring up to someone else. Or maybe feel that way because you feel like we're not measuring up to someone else's expectations. A pinch of this, a pinch of that. Yeah, here is something that is a good practice, a very good practice, and this is something that I do. This is something I do, and here's something that's a very good practice. Um, Anytime you begin to feel like you are small or a small amount, and they feel like you don't matter, keep this in mind. Small doses do not mean insignificant amounts. Let me repeat that again. Small doses do not mean insignificant amounts. Think about that for a minute. Let that sink in. Our children start off small. And some of them grow up to be taller than we are. Like my son is taller than me, but at one point in time he wasn't. Okay, cars begin as small ideas. Major corporations also begin as small ideas. Some of the greatest companies and inventions we know began in someone's garage or someone's basement. Scribbled down on a napkin or a scrap piece of paper, and the way something begins is not a telltale all sign of how it's going to stay. How something begins is not the tell-all sign that it's going to stay the way that it began. It's just not. Look at cars. Cars have progressed from just being something that got you from point A to point B to have cameras in the rear view now. So to the point you almost don't need a rear view mirror. Cell phones began more than just communication. Now they have cameras. Entire movies are shot using a camera. It went from a small idea to a big thing. So a small thing, just because it begins small, that is not a telltale sign that it will remain that way. Small does not mean small doses. Does not mean insignificant amounts. Small doses do not mean insignificant amounts. I remember once, guys, a quick story here, and you know I love a good story. If you've been watching and listening to the show, you know I love a very good story because I like the punchlines behind it. I like the plots, the twists, the turns. So I love a good story. So I'm going to share a quick story with you guys, okay? And kind of illustrate the point that I'm making about small doses don't mean insignificant amounts. I remember once while in high school, I had a science project in my biology class. It was doing a science project. So I remember once I had a project to make about a volcano, right? A volcano. So I created my volcano and kind of shaped it out of clay. And I had to add some baking soda in it. I had to add some baking soda, some red food color. And last but not least, I also had to add some vinegar, right? Some vinegar, regular vinegar. Now the instructions call for a small amount of vinegar to be added to my new clay volcano. So I added the exact amount. Now, if anyone out there who's listening to me right now, if there's anybody out there who's listening to me has ever done this before, you know what happens next, right? You know what happens next after you pour the vinegar inside. All of a sudden, the baking soda began foaming and bubbling. Then it began rising. And it continued to rise until it began to spill over the sides of my man-made volcano and onto the tray that the volcano was sitting in. And all of this from a little vinegar. All of this came from a little vinegar. We are just like the vinegar. Yeah, we are just like the vinegar. As long as we remain in our bottles, nothing will change for us. As long as we remain in our bottles, we will stay where we are. As long as we remain in our bottles, nothing changes for us. As long as we remain in our own setting, our own environment, as long as we remain around the things that we are used to, as long as we remain around the things that we are familiar with, we can never change anything else beyond that. As long as we remain in our own settings, we can never witness the impact we have on those around us. If we keep the lid on, as long as the vinegar was separated from the other ingredients, the right environment, as long as it was kept to itself, the results would have never taken place. I would like to suggest this. A lot of the results that we're looking for, we aren't able to get because we keeping the lid on ourselves. We keep ourselves separate from everything else. I'm not going to mix with this type of people. I'm not going to talk to that type of person. Listen, if you want to expand yourself, the volcano didn't begin to expand until it began to mix with the other ingredients. What is it that we should be possibly expanding in? But because we want to remain in our bottle, we can't expand. As long as we keep the lid on, we'll stay where we are. As long as we don't mix, we can't expand to where we are. As long as we keep to ourselves. Listen, kind of just like the vinegar, right? As long as it kept to itself, the results would have never taken place. There are some results that we are looking for. Maybe it calls for us to work with some people that we feel like we shouldn't work with. Maybe it calls for us to talk with some people that are culturally different, that may see things differently than we do. They may have a different perspective than we do. Listen, just because the perspective is different, the goal can still be the same. We all the time want to work with people who sees it the way we see it. But if the goal is the same, the perspectives may add to it. The vinegar just added a different perspective to the ingredients that were already there. And the results flowed. The results followed. Listen, when you want to make a difference, we've got to come out of our bottles. Let me say that again. When we want to make a difference, we've got to come out of our bottles. Yeah, we've got to come out of our bottles when we want to make a difference. Trying to remain separated from everyone will only keep us surrounded by everything we are already familiar with. It's not until the vinegar mixes with something different than itself that we can see what it can do. A pinch of this and a pinch of that. Small doses do not mean insignificant amounts. And I get it, guys. I understand sometimes it may be scary to some to come out of our comfort zone. Yeah, I get it. But if we aren't willing to be poured into something greater, then we can never be part of something bigger. If we aren't willing to be poured into something greater, then we can't be part of something bigger than we are. The volcano was bigger than the vinegar. And pouring the amount of vinegar in the larger volcano caused the vinegar to be part of the bigger explosion of the volcano. What's been waiting on us to explode? What have you been waiting to explode in your life? Maybe it's your relationship. Maybe it's your career. Maybe it's our friendships. Maybe it's a book you're trying to write. Maybe we just need to mix with the right ingredients. Maybe we just need to not separate ourselves or keep ourselves separated. Oh, listen, most of us as people, as humans, we want to remain around what's familiar to us, keep in our own bottle, but we can never expand remaining around everything that looks the same. Listen, the vinegar only made a big difference when it got around something that wasn't the same, that didn't have the same background, that didn't have the same composition, that wasn't made up the same. Maybe your answer is that we need to stop looking for everything that looks just like us or sound just like us. Maybe the fizz, when the vinegar hit the baking soda, it began to fizz and make a sound. The sound that you're looking for may not be around what you are familiar with. A pinch of this and a pinch of that. Guys, I'm going to do something. I want to offer you go on camera here. I want to offer an apology. Okay? I want to issue an apology. I'm going to offer you an apology for everything and everyone that kept you back from being your best. That told you because you are of this culture, you don't mix with that culture. Because of you are this mindset, you don't talk to people like that. Because you're short, you don't try to have a relationship with someone who's taller than you. I want to apologize to everyone that told you not to subject yourself to something that's greater than you, not to pour yourself into something bigger than you. You can do it all by yourself. Listen, doing it all by yourself means you're all by yourself. It is always a good idea to connect to something that is greater than you are. Listen, a train is good, but the cars that the train pull connect to the engine. And wherever the engine goes, the cars also go. If the engine goes to California, the cars that it's pulling go to California. Make a connection that can pull you somewhere. Because all by themselves, the cars will sit there until an engine that is strong enough that can come and pull them. I want to apologize to everybody that kept you from being the best of who you could be. I want to apologize to you for being introduced to wrong relationships, wrong enlightenments that kept us from being like the vinegar and bringing a good change to those around us. It wasn't you. It wasn't you. It was everything that was kept you. Listen, it was everything that kept us in our bottles. Everything that kept a lid on us. Everything that told us, because you're this, you don't mix with that. Because you're here, you don't go over here. Because you graduated from here, you don't talk to them. Every negative thing that kept you in your bottle, everything that told you keep the lid on, everything that told you don't mix, everything that told you don't be that way, all the self-doubt, the low self-esteem, you name it. Listen, if it kept you in your bottle, it also kept you from living. Small doses don't mean insignificant amounts. Yeah, small doses. They don't mean insignificant amounts. A pinch of this, a pinch of that. Guys, let me ask you a question. Did you know that the discovery of diamonds in South Africa occurred in 1867? They were discovered by a farmer. He was a poor farmer. A Boer farmer, Boer, Boer farmer. And once word got out about his discovery, people came from all over the world, all over the area, all over to this area. Towns were being built up, cities began to spring up, commerce increased, money began to come in and out, being exchanged. And the farmer wasn't even looking to become rich. He wasn't looking to become rich. The farmer wasn't looking to become rich. He literally was only looking for a way to grow food. He was looking for grow food. He kept digging in the ground, trying to plant crop. And what happened was these big rocks kept coming up. So he wasn't trying to become rich. He was only trying to grow food and had no idea something valuable was within his reach. Something that he walked past every day, lying in the dirt, when people found out they came from all over the world fighting for a chance to get rich, fighting for a chance and opportunity at some diamonds. Well, much like the diamonds, when we begin to realize our value, it will create opponents. It will create opponents. It attracts oppositions. When we begin to realize our value, it will attract opposition. And our value, when we begin to realize our value, it is an invitation to thieves looking to steal your energy and your time. And listen, get this, you will attract some things like the diamond. You will attract some things simply because you are too good to pass up. Your value is like the discovery of diamonds. Listen, diamonds were discovered on the land of a farmer lying in the dirt. He walked past them. Before the farmer knew what diamonds were, they were valuable. They did not gain in value when they were placed in some jewelry store on Fifth Avenue. As a matter of fact, they made the jewelry store more valuable when they arrived. In other words, some things didn't get better until you showed up. Some things became more valuable when you got there. Never undersell your value just because small doses don't mean insignificant amounts. Guys, it's that time, and as always, it's been a real blast. Don't forget to visit our Facebook page. That's Tell Me Something Good with the capital T. And guys, don't forget you can stream and tune in each week right here, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, live on Facebook, guys. And listen, guys, as always, you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and so many more. As I get out of here, don't forget, if you're going to tell me something, then tell me something good. I'm out of here. Peace. I gotta go.